There are influences in the unseen that are dictating a lot of the way your life goes, and these things are known as pendulums or thought forms. They exist in a reality, like I said, that is unseen, in a frequency that is not within the same frequency as the physical. And so not a lot of people are aware of them because a lot of people think the only thing real and what's influencing their life is the physical. But thought forms and pendulums are playing such a huge role in everyone's life that it becomes of great benefit to learn not only what they are, but how to get out of the influence of pendulums or to select very particular pendulums that actually benefit you and serve you. And so today we're going to go over what pendulums are, but more importantly, how to go about selecting a pendulum that will benefit you or to tune out completely, because it will make all of the difference when it comes to achieving what it is you want to achieve or just living the kind of life you would like to create for yourself. Now, the first thing to recognize is that pendulums are thought forms, and not all thought forms are necessarily pendulums, but pendulums are kind of like group levels of thought. Many people or many different thoughts accumulated create what's known as a pendulum, right? A thought form can be sometimes singular. We're not going to get too nuanced with this kind of thing, but a pendulum you can think of like a mass thought form because a lot of thought power has gone to a particular idea or something else. And we'll get into exactly what that is in just a moment. But one thing I want to bring your attention to first is the idea that thoughts are things. And I know you've heard this quote before, most likely, that thoughts are things. And it's a very true saying. A lot of us, again, believe because we can't see thoughts, that we can't touch them, we can't taste them, we can't engage our five physical senses, that they are not real and don't have much influence in our life. But it's the exact opposite. In fact, most of how our life goes is formed by how we are thinking and what thoughts we entertain. Remember the quote, you get what you think about most of the time. And thought forms are going to play a huge role in what you're actually going to think about. So let's move on to what this is, understanding that thoughts come in different frequencies. And the frequency you're at is a lot of times going to determine which pendulum or thought forms you're going to have access to or you're influenced by, right? Thoughts activate different levels of frequency. If you think certain thoughts or entertain certain thoughts, it will put you on one frequency, and then other thoughts will put you on different frequencies. Each of these frequencies come with corresponding effects or benefits or the opposite of benefits, depending on what frequency you are on. So just as a simple example, if you think more negatively or allow yourself to be swayed by what we could call a negative pendulum, you will notice that you are on a frequency that presents you with more thoughts that are negative, events and circumstances that also correspond with those thoughts. So understand, not all thoughts are the same. They correspond at different levels of frequencies, and based on the frequency or the resonance will determine what you're receiving. Again, there are some pendulums we could say are at a higher frequency, and there are some at a lower, and then there are frequencies we can even go to that do not contain pendulums at all. We're going to go over, are pendulums good or bad and everything like that. And just to kind of give that away, they're not necessarily good or bad. They are just focused on survival and kind of growing themselves. And we'll go over how that actually works. You see, everything has a thought form or a pendulum. Absolutely anything you can think of has essentially a thought form or pendulum that a part of it, right? So any idea, any kind of movement, any group, even things that seem innocuous, like certain companies, right? Or certain like ways of doing things like sports. Volleyball has a thought form or a pendulum behind it. Certain bands have thought forms or pendulums behind them. Certain political movements especially have strong thought forms and pendulums behind them. right? And what happens is when you focus in on the sport, you focus in on the political group, you focus in on whatever the thing is, even certain objects like record players, for example, VHS sets. These are kind of more inactive pendulums because as time moves along, people take their focus off them. They're still technically active to a degree, but have much less power. But when you start thinking or activating the pendulum in your life, or accessing is a better way of saying it, accessing the resonance frequency of whatever the pendulum or thought form is, you suddenly get kind of influenced into its energy. Depending on the pendulum, this can be either a good or a bad thing for you, depending on your goals. Some pendulums will absolutely just extract your energy for its own gain. Other pendulums may supply you with energy, again, for its own gain, but in this case, it also benefits you and becomes a win-win. One thing to really keep in mind when it comes to pendulums is, we'll go here first, is they're all about survival, right? They're not really concerned about you. So when you're accessing any pendulum, you have to be careful, even ones that seem good. Now, there are certainly pendulums that we could observe as harmless or even beneficial to you in the moment. And so long as they are serving you and those thought forms are serving you, there is no problem in accessing it, giving energy to it, and it then returning whatever it's returning to you. But for the vast majority of pendulums, they tend to have a negative influence on people's lives. This is stuff like political parties, this is stuff like certain movements and whatever else it is. It tends to take your energy without giving much in return, or take your energy and again, influence your thoughts in a certain direction or keep you at a different resonance frequency. Now, this part is very important, and we'll put the word resonance in there because that's a very important word for us to have here, is that certain pendulums can only extract your energy or kind of feed off of you. That's essentially what they're doing, is they're feeding off of your energy for survival, and can only do it if you are within their resonance frequency. Meaning if you're not within their resonance frequency, you're beyond it, they can't touch you. So for example, if you are vibrating at a higher frequency or consciousness, certain pendulums just cannot access you because they cannot survive in the environment you are currently at. And again, its main goal is survival and growing and kind of expanding its own energy. So it's not going to waste too much time in trying to hook you if you're not within its resonance frequency. It's not worth it to the pendulum or the thought form. I heard someone once say, a mentor said, with thought forms, or also known as egregores is another name for them, is they will try maybe about 2 or 3 times to hook you into their resonance frequency. And if you just don't cling on to those thoughts, they move on. Because if they stay in your energetic field for too long and you are beyond their reach and they can't get you to come down, then it actually is detrimental to them because you actually start absorbing their energy versus them being able to absorb yours. You're now coming from a higher level of energy that can't be touched by whatever this thought form or pendulum is, and so they then move on to whoever's next. And so learning how to deal with pendulums and thought forms also protects you from harmful ones that mean to extract your energy, even though it gives you the illusion of providing you with something good. Again, a political movement is a great one to focus on because a lot of people believe that some people believe it's good to be in that, but a lot of times it is just a powerful pendulum that is hooking people in and extracting their energy for its own means, which is to expand, to become more powerful, etc., etc. So now going over this, the goal again of all pendulums pretty much is to access your energy. This is how they survive, and this is how they expand their influence. Again, it's almost parasitical unless you're very, very careful and specific about which pendulums and thought forms you entertain. Again, certain pendulums can do a lot of good for you, but understand at the end of the day, this is always their goal. Their goal is always survival. Their goal is never to elevate you unless it benefits them. They have no heart in the sense of, oh, they care for you, therefore they're going to elevate you. They will only do that if it also serves them to do so. And so within reality transurfing, where a lot of this comes, they'll talk about how certain pendulums will have favorites. And these favorites, they actually give a lot of energy and kind of elevate because it helps them as well. So always keep in mind, it's only going to help you if you're helping them in some way, or there's some benefit to this thought form or pendulum promoting you or giving you energy or whatever else. And so we can think of certain pendulums that would have more of a positive influence that we can tune into, again, because it's going to be a win-win. But we still have to be careful because as soon soon as it becomes a win-lose in the sense that it will start extracting energy and not giving back to you, you want to cut ties from that pendulum and get out of its resonance frequency. Now remember, a pendulum accesses you typically through thought energy, meaning it will try and hook you and get you to a certain resonance frequency via thought. And the way it does this is you have ever noticed if you've had thoughts, and I say you had thoughts loosely here because it's not really what's happening, but certain thoughts come into your mind and you look at them and go, I didn't think that. That's not me. I did not suggest that thought. That's not coming from me. It seems to be coming from an outside influence. That is most likely a pendulum or thought form. If you go into a room with a group of people, and especially let's say if the energy of the room is slightly more negative, and you notice this happening, it is the pendulum of the group or that room that is trying to hook you into the energy of that room so it can take your energy as well and grow stronger. In a nutshell, that's essentially what's happening. And so you're going to have thoughts that come in that try, if you're not already, to get you within the resonance frequency of the pendulum so it can then feed or extract energy, right? And it will do a lot, especially if it's got you in its resonance frequency, to keep you there. So supplying you with thoughts that make sense with the energy you're currently in, so maybe getting you to complain, oh, that's unfair, this person did this or that, is a beautiful place for you to be for certain pendulums because it's very easy to extract energy. Have you ever noticed also when you're being like that, let's say more of a victim level consciousness, you're complaining, you're moaning, that you also seem to feel low energy, you also seem to feel drained. Maybe you haven't really done much physically. There's nothing really in the physical sense that should make you tired, but maybe you feel tired all the time when you're in these energies. Yes, because your energy actually is being, in a sense, harvested and extracted by these pendulums. One analogy or comparison I really love, if you've ever seen the Harry Potter series, they have something called, now I've forgotten what they're called, but they're the cloaked figures that kind of suck the essence out of people and it gets cold. Dementors, that's what they're called. And I kind of think that either the author was aware of pendulums or something similar and brought that in, or it was just some kind of synchronicity that happened there because they act actually very similar to how in the thought realm pendulums act, where they kind of drain your energy, they suck your energy, they need it for their survival. They, I think in the Harry Potter series, Dementors give you all these crazy thoughts. They describe it like the biggest feeling of despair. It's similar. It's more Hollywooded and kind of extreme because this will be more subtle at times, but it can be analogous to what's in that book in that way. I always find that very interesting that it's so close. And you can probably find it in other stories and, fiction, similar ideas, except this is a very real thing. Again, thoughts are things, pendulums and thought forms are real things that exist. They're not just ideas, they exist within a certain realm and they have a modus operandi. They're trying to, again, survive like anything is trying to do by extracting your energy. Again, they do this through thought, trying to do that, and they do this through your attention. And this is a very important part of it because you might think, oh, I won't succumb to this pendulum of this political party, I will do the opposite. Well, you're still actually giving it energy. A pendulum, again, is not a moral character. It does not care in which way you give it attention. It need only require your attention to take your energy or to start influencing your life. And so one of the solutions to removing certain pendulums from our lives is to literally turn our back to the pendulum. When the thoughts come up, we just ignore them and let them pass by. The suggestions that try to hook you. When it tries to get you to fight it, in the sense of, oh, you hate me, you don't want me, you hate me, so why not fight me? Why not do the opposite? We just do not engage because what it's trying to do is hook you through opposition to it. So, whether it's Republican to Democrat, Democrat to Republican, or, this idea, veganism to carnivore, carnivore to veganism, whatever it is, it's causing the battle, but keeps actually those two groups in a similar place of being able to harvest their energy. And so the way we avoid this with negative pendulums that would influence you in this way that you don't want is we simply turn our backs to them and we do not give them our attention while focusing our attention to frequencies that actually benefit us. Okay, so now we're going to go over some of the main ways a pendulum tries to hook or control you so you'll be more aware of when this is going on. You may find as we go through this that you already have these influences in your life, and then we're going to go over what you can do to defeat a pendulum pendulum, and then we will also go over when you should ride or allow a pendulum to take you because it will be beneficial, right? So we'll have basically everything involved here. Now, here are some of the main ways in which a pendulum is trying to control you, or perhaps is. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to try and provoke you in some kind of way. Again, this could be through thought. This could even be through something outside of you happening to you, someone saying something to you. They'll absolutely use other people within kind of their influence to do this to you and get you into the resonance they need you to be in, or to keep you in the resonance they need you to be in, for example. Again, with political parties, you can see this playing out because the pendulum doesn't care which side of the aisle you're on. It loves that they fight each other because that's a way of provoking that keeps everyone within its control being able to extract the energy. The next thing is trying to make you feel either right or wrong. A huge ego game, trying to get one up on someone else, spiritual one-upsmanship or anything else. I'm right, you're wrong, or the other way going, I'm wrong. I'm always wrong, right? Down the other end of the spectrum. It will love to use this one because it feeds into our ego, which keeps us in lower conscious states, which makes us accessible for energy extraction. The next is drama, which is another obvious one. Anything that's dramatic, you'll notice maybe people around you getting involved in drama, in gossip, in this kind of stuff. Another favorite of the pendulum because it keeps you right within that range of their frequency to just continually take your energy. Drama is a huge one. The next is always needing to be in arguments or fights or online fighting and arguing with people. Absolutely puts you into their resonance frequency. Again, it doesn't care what side of the aisle you're on. It only cares that you're giving it attention. And especially if you're doing it emotionally, it gives it more energy to feed off of. Remember, emotion is energy in motion. When you're angry and frustrated, you're giving off more energy. It absolutely laps that up, and so will keep you in that, which brings us to defend or attack, which is kind of the same thing. Both require quite a bit of energy. Both feed it quite a bit of energy, so it'll try and put you in that place, show you things that it thinks you'll attack or want to defend against, and get you into that zone. Again, through urgency or fear, if you ever find you're rushing, you're in this urgent state, it feels like life or death, even though after it's not going to feel that way. This is usually a pendulum trying to get you, control you, or keep you within its resonance. Fear is one of its favorite places to put people because it's just one of the easiest things to put people on the planet. Again, fear and pride, right and wrong would be with pride, arguments, defend or attack, usually with pride, obviously fear being different, but ultimately understand it's trying to keep you in low levels of consciousness, low levels of frequency. As you start going up the consciousness scale, if you're aware of the Hawking scale of consciousness, once you start to get to level 200 and above, you start to get out of the range of negative pendulums and thought forms, and it actually becomes a risk for those pendulums to try and hook you or get you because they then have to go into an environment that doesn't support their energy, and they can start losing influence and energy if they stay in that environment too long, which is what we ultimately want to do, right? So if we're in low consciousness, we are susceptible. When we raise our frequency, we're not. And that's going to be a part of the solutions is don't try and get hooked into it or argue with it or whatever else. Just aim to raise your frequency and consciousness, and you will be out of the way or range of influence by these pendulums. And the other ones are news, content, conflict, especially addiction to these things. If you find you are addicted to the news, addicted to content, so scrolling on the internet, scrolling on Instagram, again, a lot of this is, if I can get this pen off, a lot of this usually calibrates at drama, or it calibrates at fear, even urgency, right? These contents usually are at this level of consciousness. Again, you can ride good pendulums in a higher level of consciousness, but if you find that whatever you're being influenced by is drama-based, it's trying to provoke you into a reaction, it's trying to put you in fear or low consciousness, again, this is one of the ways in which pendulums will go to control you. Again, conflict being the other. So another one of, just put it over here in big letters because this is a big one. One of the favorite tools of the pendulum is something called excessive potential or importance. They will try and make you create all of this importance around something, we can also think of this as pedestalization. And if you're trying to create things in your life, there is nothing that will push further away from you what it is you want than raising importance. And this is another favorite of the pendulum to get you into its resonance frequency and extract and harvest your energy. So when you're putting this inflated importance on something in your life, one of the first things you want to do is something we're about to go over: lower the importance. So how do you defeat a pendulum? Again, a pendulum can't control you necessarily in the sense of it can make you do exactly what it wants you to do. It tries to influence you. But at the end of the day, you are the creator and you are way more powerful than the pendulum. What the pendulum aims to do is influence and manipulate you in a way to get you in range and then extract your energy, because you're very powerful. It wants your energy, but can only do it if it succeeds in manipulating you. If it was more powerful than you, it would just overwhelm you. It wouldn't need your permission. It wouldn't need you to basically disempower yourself. It would just take your energy, hook, line, and sinker. That's not the way it is. You can raise your energy because you're a powerful being well beyond the influence of a pendulum. A pendulum is only as strong as the people it can bring into its structure. And again, you are more powerful than that structure. If those people are removed, if those thoughts, that energy that's being extracted is removed, the pendulum falls and dies. It stops. It can't keep going. Its sway and swing no longer is influential. Again, we talked about some old pendulums, some innocuous ones, but you can also look at certain political movements that are no more. Those pendulums are now essentially dead. We can look at things like, again, record players, VHSs might be a certain sway. Those are more innocuous for the most part. But again, the influence is gone. They have no power because the power of the people who use these things and thought about these things is no longer there. So moving on to what we can do. The first one is we already mentioned, but it's don't react. That's the first one. When it tries to provoke you, when it tries to get you to argue and do all these things, try not to react. Don't get hooked in. Now, if you do react, then best next thing to do is to take a step back and get yourself out of the reaction. So let's say you react immediately and then you realize you reacted, wake up and take a step back. Get out of the energy of the reaction, because right now you're quite literally being harvested. You are having your energy extracted and it's trying to get you to spiral to be able to take your energy for a longer period of time. You ever notice when you do react that it can sometimes dictate your whole day if you allow it? Yeah, because it is a pendulum trying to keep that going to continually have you in its frequency so it can take your energy. So the first thing is don't react. We already mentioned this next one, which is lower importance. Elevated importance is a pendulum's one of its favorite tools, or a thought form's favorite tool, to make you put importance on all these things. Importance on money, importance on health, importance on relationships. And again, we have been convinced to believe that the more importance we put on something, again, because of the influence of a pendulum, this is a thought that is propagated by them, that if we put more importance on something, we're more likely to get it. Well, how's that been working out? The more importance you put on something, the more you push it away. So if you're desperate for more money, you usually end up not having as much. If you're desperate for a certain kind of relationship, you usually don't get it. Kind of like being needy in a relationship and it kind of repelling the other person, so long as everything's healthy in that situation, right? And so the way to counter this is always lower the importance. You can say something, for example, everything is going to work out in my favor, even if I don't know how. Right? That takes away the control element of needing it to happen in a certain way. And the pendulum is going to try and convince you that it has to happen in a certain way. You need to control this and control that. When in reality, we just need to lower the importance. A great quote is, when you lower the importance, a solution will present itself. Because when you lower the importance, your frequency automatically rises, because you're no longer in fear, you're no longer in apathy, you're no longer in drama, because you don't need things to happen in a certain way. So you move beyond that, you move into typically at least willingness and acceptance, which are high levels of consciousness, and you can use that as a springboard to go higher, which will actually allow for favorable results to happen. So we need to lower the importance. The next is to be the observer and to remind yourself to do this often. This is going to help you to not react and also lower the importance. It's also going to help you with the next one as well. But you want to move more into the role of the observer. Don't be a participant yet. Be an observer who then will choose what they wish to participate in after they've kind of seen the lay of the land, right? So instead of just getting hooked and hooked and hooked and react, you take a step back and here's this thought that's coming in. Okay, here's a thought. It's just a thought, so it's nothing yet, but is it something that serves me or is it something that's trying to extract from me? And you see this thought that's trying to provoke you, drama-based arguments or whatever else. And now that you're the observer, you see that it's separate from you. You see, one thing the pendulum will try and do is it will try and get you to identify with the thought. So you think it's you. You think this thought is coming from you. You think you are the thought. And then hook, line, and sinker, you're in one of these and the pendulum has you in its resonance frequency. But when you're the observer, you're the one watching the thought. Therefore, you can't be the thought. You are not the thought. It is just a thought. You are someone experiencing a thought, or it has come into your awareness and attention. And you recognize as the observer, you get to make a choice in what relationship you would like to have with this thought or idea or energy or whatever is coming up. This works for emotions as well. You're the observer, and you now get to make a choice. And so you can now choose, this is something I will take on, or this is something I will allow to pass by and won't get hooked. And remember, with pendulums or thought forms, it'll try 2 or 3 times to get you into its resonance frequency. And if it can't, because you're at a higher frequency, it will move on because it is at risk. Remember, it's self-centered. It is at risk by continuing to try and hook you. So it's not going to take that risk, right? If you're in an elevated frequency, it will try maybe a couple times, but if it can't get you, it will move on. Right? So the next thing is to redirect your focus. So you've been the observer, you've observed, now you want to choose differently. I did not give myself enough space there. So there you go. So now you redirect your focus. So you have observed, you've not reacted, you've lowered the importance. Now you still want to make a choice. You are a creator, you are making choices. Now you can choose either to use a thought to get onto a pendulum that benefits you, or just to choose what direction you want to go in, right? So this thought comes up, and what's great about these thoughts when you're not reacting is you can look at them and through contrast, be better directed in which way you want to go. And what I mean is, let's say you have a thought and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. It brings up the question, well, what do you want to do? And those other thoughts actually help to birth what it is you do want, and then you can move in that direction and focus by choosing differently what you want. Notice this isn't change something. It's not try and change the thought, because then the egregore or the pendulum's won, because you're now wrestling with the thought. You're trying to change it. Again, it's like having a captain at the ship of your vessel that's moving in a certain direction, and you try and change a negative captain. The captain's not going to change. But if you choose a new captain that goes in place that just is going in that direction, well, then suddenly you'll be off to the races moving where you want to go. So you always want to choose differently and redirect your focus. And so I would keep in mind all of these and the ways they try to hook you, and then remembering all of these to defeat it. You notice it's not that complicated to defeat one. Why is it not complicated? Why is it not hard when you get this? Because you are infinitely more powerful than a pendulum. You are infinitely more powerful than an egregore or thought form, but this doesn't mean to then, go off and not be aware of them. Be aware so you know if they're trying to hook you, and then bring yourself back into your power, your ability to be the observer and creator. Again, this is observation, this is creation. Excuse my terrible writing here. This is observation, this is creation, and these two help you to move back into what you truly are, which is the observer and creator, right? So this allows you to observe because you're being the observer, and then this allows you to create based on your observation. You've observed, you've seen the actual lay of the land. Now, with that information and data, you step into your power as a creator and choose the direction you want to go. Okay, so now we need to talk briefly about the conditions where you can ride a pendulum and actually benefit. Now, this could be for almost any pendulum, although we want ones at more of a positive frequency. But depending on how you interact with it and what it gives you, you can safely ride a pendulum. We'll go over what that is and also some pitfalls to watch out for. Basically, the pitfalls are from that last screen, if any of that's happening, like it's trying to hook you, it's trying to get you into drama, if any of that's happening and you're succumbing to it, then you want to stop riding this pendulum. But in a lot of cases, it can be hugely beneficial. For example, let's say, a certain meditation technique is a pendulum, right? And let's say you are joyfully riding that pendulum, it's providing you energy and everything else, then that's a beneficial thing. But let's say then you get incredibly serious and rigid and almost in your head about it, then you're suddenly feeding just the pendulum without gaining anything in return, right? You've raised the importance, you've created drama around it. And so even though the idea is seen as a really good one in a vacuum, you've now succumbed to a frequency with that pendulum where it's actually just extracting energy from you and it ceases to become beneficial. So understand there might be things you go, oh, this is good in a nutshell, but there are people, for example, who align with certain spiritual, say, modalities that can be really good, but become, for example, very prideful about it. They become very right versus wrong about it. And that's when it can take a dangerous toll. So don't just look at it at face value or appearances, look at how it's making you feel and everything else. So one thing is, if it aligns to you, is something that you can ride and go with. So for example, the pendulum of meditation, the pendulum of certain spiritual ideas, right? Those still exist, and if they align to you, which means they're going to energize and uplift you, that's a perfectly good pendulum to follow and allow to ride along, because you're going to gain energy from it. Essentially, any that's going to give you good energy is a good one to align with. The next thing is it doesn't drain you. If you ever notice a pendulum is draining you, you either need to reconstruct your relationship with it because you might be raising importance or doing all this other stuff, or it's time to completely just release that relationship to this pendulum because it's getting to a point where it's not benefiting you, right? So if it's draining you, that's something you need to also be aware of. And the next thing is, don't be attached to its outcomes. Maybe certain things within the pendulum have certain outcomes they're going for, and you need to make sure you are not attached to these, raising importance through these, or again, now being susceptible to having your energy drained in order to support its outcome. Remember, this is about your journey and what you came here to create. If you get sucked into a movement that has a particular outcome, unless it is completely aligned and therefore gives you joy, you're going to be in for a rough ride. And a lot of people get seduced into that thinking, oh, that's the outcome I want, but it's really just being the influence of the pendulum. Again, if it feels draining, if it puts you in low consciousness, if it does not uplift and align, then it isn't your true dharma or journey or whatever we're calling it. But again, if this is fulfilled, then you can ride the pendulum and gain energy via or through it. Just recognize that no pendulum is looking to necessarily support you without benefit to itself. Don't look at it from a moral standpoint. These are just thought forms that have one mission essentially, and that is to survive and thrive energetically by having more adherence and gaining more energy through them. So they don't care how they do it. They don't care if also you benefit or you don't, but they, for example, if you died, they wouldn't care. Let's just say it that way, right? So make sure this criteria is fit if you're going to follow one. Now, again, this could be you joining a movement joyfully without identification, right? So you actually gain a lot by being in whatever movement or whatever the thing is. You get joy out of it, it aligns, it uplifts, it doesn't drain you. But the moment you start becoming emotional, serious, rigid, understand that you're now feeding the pendulum and moving away from your purpose with whatever that is. It is no longer benefiting you, and now it's extracting your energy instead of uplifting you. Essentially, the easiest litmus test is when you are with a pendulum, is it uplifting you and causing your energy to raise? Does it seem like you have more energy to work with? And again, things at higher levels of consciousness will typically have this effect more. Or does it feel like it's draining you? Does it feel like it's just using your energy? Do you feel that it's just leaving you depleted? Then that is one you most likely want to just distance yourself from. And again, using the steps we had in the last screen to get out of its resonance frequency. Now, this is some great stuff, and if you want to really learn how to do this at a high level, you can check out Mold Your Reality down below. It's going to show you how to do this quickly and so much more. We're getting amazing results coming through that program, which will be on screen right now as I'm talking. I've made it very affordable. You get 2 coaching calls a week and so much more. You can learn more through the link below, or if you want to work with me on an even closer, more kind of one-on-one small group basis, I have that down below as well. Now, this next video over here is also going to help you to wire this in even more and benefit even more what you've learned today, so that you are creating now with the awareness of pendulums, making sure you don't get sucked into their frequency, and also being able to use them to your benefit.